Hey, welcome back to Education Through Music, the podcast. What is the place of technology in the music classroom? After all, some of the stuff written in 1450 still sounds great, and the violin is a piece of technology that hasn't needed more than a couple of updates in the past few centuries. Yet, music production is relevant to anybody interested in recorded music, which is a lot of us. So, what is the place of technology in the music classroom? To help me answer that question today, I am joined by an expert whom I first met in a grad school class on tech in music education at Teachers College. He was teaching the class, and he still teaches it, all while doing a lot of other things, which I'll list off in just a moment. My guest today is Dr. Jim Frankel, and he was the first person I thought of when crafting the line of inquiry we'll explore today. Here's a little more background on Jim. Dr. Jim Frankel is the head of digital education for Wise Music and the director of MusicFirst. Previously, he was managing director of Soundtree, and before that, he was an instrumental and general music teacher for 15 years in New Jersey public schools. Jim is a widely published author in various state, national, and international journals of music education. He is the author of The Teacher's Guide to Music, Media, and Copyright Law, co-author of YouTube in Music Education, contributing author for Critical Issues in Music Education, and co-author of Making Music with GarageBand and Mixcraft. In addition to his writing, Jim is a highly sought-after clinician and keynote speaker in the local, national, and international music education community. He's on the board of directors for TIME, NJMEA, and is a past president of ATMI. And now, without any further ado, Jim, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure, Noah. Very good to speak with you.
So for a number of years, you taught as a band director. So I'm wondering, first of all, how tech made its way into your classroom and then later into your career trajectory.
So great question and probably a little bit of a non-traditional answer. And that is that I was always a synth nerd before I became a music ed major. Before I was a tuba player, I was a synth nerd. And there was no real place for a synth nerd at university. I did a theory comp major so that I could play my synths, and get credit for it. But when I started teaching, I think my first year, I was an elementary band director in two different schools and kind of itinerant. I had no room for technology. I was just worried about the kids not calling me names and try to get through the disciplinary side of. I taught in the inner city in Irvington, New Jersey, near Newark, New Jersey. Had its own set of challenges. When I got my next gig, it was pre-K to 8 general vocal instrumental. So it was like a complete Pied Piper, jack of all trades. And I don't know how many of your listeners will relate to this, but I think some will. The last thing in the world that I wanted to do was teach general music. Period. Full stop. I just wanted to be a band director, but a gig comes up and they say, "Can you do this?" And you say yes. You go, okay. And so I knew how to be a band director. My student teaching I did at Ridgewood High School in New Jersey. I had the best mentor teacher, Jeff Haas. I really knew what I was doing with band. No clue what to do with general music. So that's where technology came in. I knew that I needed to engage kids. I taught middle school general music. That to me was the scariest thing of all. And I found that technology was the absolute easiest way to get them engaged, to get them on task, to get them excited about coming to music class, rather than, the kind of the attitude of, I really don't want to learn about Bach. This is going to be boring. So heretically, I almost never used technology in the band room, almost never. The only time I did use technology was in my small group lessons. I used Smart Music. I used Aurelia. I used tools that would help my kids learn how to read music. If I had a drummer who wanted to play saxophone, but I didn't have enough time to teach them to read music, I'd put them on some kind of software. So as a band director, it really became something ancillary to my teaching, because every minute of every rehearsal was precious. And as a music educator, I thought technology would be a waste of time during my rehearsals. Again, heretical, yes, but that's the way I felt. So hopefully that gives you, it wasn't really band that necessitated technology, or that it was more the general music side of things.
Got it. And another thing that I'm hearing is that there was an opportunity to mix a little bit of something that was more in your wheelhouse, something that was interesting to you, with the general music experience, which was not your first choice, which is something I think is really important for music teachers, is to find the thing that they can get excited about so that the kids can get excited about it.
I couldn't agree more, Noah. And my thought is that one of the many beautiful things about the subject area that we teach, I personally think it's the best thing taught in schools, and I mean that, is that we as music educators can really put a lot of ourselves into the instruction, into the curriculum. At my second school that I taught at, there was no curriculum. So they were like, Jim, just teach what you want to teach. As long as the kids are happy and are learning music, we're happy. So, I immediately fell back on the things that I was comfortable with, which at the time were technology. And I did a lot of musical theater directing, meaning being in the pit, like running musicals. I come from a Broadway family, so it was technology and musicals. So guess what we did? Musicals and technology. I had like 3 musicals running a year with kids. And then when I got to my final position in public schools, which was in Frankel Lakes, New Jersey, for 11 years, again, I was teaching general music and I was teaching band. And they said, Jim, you get to write the middle school music curriculum. So I did exactly. I got a music technology program. I had the kids composing, which is something I really love doing. I knew that if I liked it, as an ADHD kid that was like, thought school was boring, if I liked technology, I was pretty sure kids in my class would too. So yeah, I think falling back on the things that you're really good at and passionate about also makes longevity a reality when you're teaching music, because if you're doing something you love, I started a jazz band because I love jazz. That's what keeps you happy. It's what keeps you coming back. And then the ancillary effect, in my opinion, is if the kids see that you're into it, they're far more likely to find your teaching engaging.
For the listener who is already a lover of music technology and music production and that sort of thing, they won't require a whole lot of convincing that belongs in a music program. But for the listener whose technology is 500 years old and hasn't been updated in a while, and for good reason, the violin's like pretty much good to go, doesn't require an update. What is the use of technology in that setting, that band, orchestra, chorus setting? You mentioned working with students to learn some theory and that sort of thing, but what are some other ways that music technology can support that sort of teacher?
Excellent question. So there are 2 ways to answer this. One is the answer that will address the last 2.5, 3 years, and then the other is moving forward. On March 13th, 2020, I became a very, very, very popular person, because when the proverbial rug was pulled out of from under every single music program in the United States because of the shutdown, everyone said, "What the heck do I do?" And I had lots and lots of ideas, and I helped lots of educators, and it made me feel real good. But on September of 2019, I think most music educators, especially ensemble directors, had that question exactly. Like, how would you do this, Jim? Like, this doesn't make any sense. So here's a couple of ideas that I think are transparent uses of technology, meaning it's just for bettering your ensemble and it's not a distraction. So perfect example is Sight Reading Factory. Sight Reading Factory is the best online tool for teaching kids how to sight read. And as educators, pre-Sight Reading Factory, you'd have to run over to your closet, pull out some type of arrangement, choir, strings, band, whatever, hand all that paper out, then say to the kids, all right, we're going to play measures, 17 through 23 or 28, whatever it is, go. And they would butcher it. And then you'd all right, let's try it again. And they'd butcher it again. You're all right, fine. We sight read, hand it back in, put it all back, now completely out of order, throw it back in the closet. And one day in a year or two, you're going to open up and go, what happened here, right? So Sight Reading Factory is the perfect example of where technology is not getting in the way and helps you. So in that software, which is super cheap, you can have generate unlimited, never repeated sight reading examples for band, choir, orchestra. And as part of your daily warm-up, you're saying, all right, we're going to do our long tones, then we're going to play a couple of scales, then look up here on the board, wham, you do the sight reading and you move on. And then you go to your first piece and you're rehearsing it. That may not sound like technology integration, and that's what my whole philosophy of technology is. It's just another way. It's just a tool. That's all it is. And if you treat it like some special thing, then it doesn't fit. But if you're doing that, I mean, I've been to so many band rooms in my career. I've had the privilege of traveling around the world. But in the United States, if I go to like Texas, to a Texas band hall, as they call them, they've got Tonal Energy, which is this really awesome iPhone app. And they've got it blasting through the speakers, and they've got their metronome going, and they've got their tuning tone, whatever you have. That band director is not thinking, wow, I'm using technology. He wants his kids on task the second they get in there. And the choir director and the orchestra director, they're thinking the same thing. The only other way, I love passive uses of technology in the ensemble, and that is for recording. I had the privilege of taking a tuba lesson with Sam Palafian, who's no longer with us. And the lesson that he gave me, I never forgot. I drove all the way up to Boston Conservatory, paid a lot of money to take this lesson, and all we did for an hour is he taught me how to record myself playing the tuba. He didn't teach me any technique, nothing like that. It was purely, wow, Jim, you need to hear how you sound. And so I listened to myself, and for any musician, any listener, that when you hear yourself sing or play back, it's very humbling, because what's going on in your head is very different than what's going on in everyone else's ears. Right. So as an ensemble director, record them all the time. Have them go play right through a piece. If you're a choir director, sing through the piece and then immediately play it back for them and ask the kids, what did you hear? What do we need to work on? How is the blending? How's the intonation? And that, to me, you're building musicianship skills, and it's a kind of a passive or not in the way use of technology. Those are two: Sight Reading Factory, recording, and even things like, practice assessment, whether it's smart music or MusicFirst or sound check or whatever you use to get your kids playing or singing and getting feedback. It doesn't really matter. That's also another use, but that's outside of the rehearsal time.
Yeah, and that reminds me of something that we're always telling teachers that they should do for themselves, especially in their first couple of years of teaching, is record yourself teaching, because that's the best way of getting some instantaneous. It's the same reason you would have kids listen to themselves playing. You get this feedback right away, and then you can start implementing it and making these quick changes and critical listening, critical observing, that sort of thing.
But you see the point, right? Is that recording takes up no time in your rehearsal. You just click play, you click record, and that 2-3 minute playback moment where the kids are quiet and they're not playing and they're listening, that to me is so much better feedback for the kids than you I will admit that when I was an ensemble director, I raised my voice far more than I should have, mostly to tell them to be quiet or put your instruments on. Stop talking. That, that kind of, that thing was, but if you're playing it for them and they're on task listening and then going, wow, I hear myself, or wow, the drums really are too loud. Dr. Frankel always says we're too loud, but they really are too loud. It's far better than in my opinion, that recording speaks way, way clearer to the kids than anything you can say to them.
And that, as you mentioned, that is a passive use of technology where you don't have to spend an entire lesson teaching the students how to use a thing that they may or may not get any use out of. It's something that's set up in the back of the room. You hit the button, and then you've got your value add without all that extra effort. What are some uses of technology that might require a little bit more of that setup, but are worth it?
So I personally think, and it all depends on what you're teaching, right? So let's say that we'll switch gears and say you're a general music teacher. It all starts from the curriculum. It all starts from what you're trying to teach. And so if you're saying, like, we're in, it's November when we're recording this, it's Native American History Month. So let's say you're going, I would like to create a lesson plan, some type of unit on Native American music. I want it to be authentic. I want it to be engaging. I want the kids to learn a song. I want whatever it is that you're doing. The way I look at it is you then go on an amazing website called Google. You look around for like resources that are out there. You try to vet them and make sure they're from a reliable source like the Smithsonian or something where you go, yep, I bet this is legit and not just somebody, writing something. And so from a training perspective, it all comes down to what tool do you want to use to help your kids grasp a concept better. So it could be it's a website. It could be that if you're going to incorporate creativity into that lesson and have the kids record something, whether it's using a digital audio workstation like Soundtrap, BandLab, Soundation, GarageBand, whatever it is you have at hand, or if it's notation software like Flat, Noteflight, Sibelius, again, Finale, whatever you have, it's then, all right, well, what skill set do I need just for this project? Because I think a lot of music educators specifically are so overworked as it is. They've got so many side hustle gigs. The minute they leave the school, which they're usually the last one to leave, the minute they leave, they're probably doing 3 or 4 private lessons before they go to a rehearsal with an ensemble they're either conducting or playing with. I remember when I was in my 15 years of public school teaching, I had no free time at all. So, the idea of saying, well, Jim, you're going to have to become an expert at something like Soundtrap in order to do this project. Absolutely not. Go on and find exactly, all right, the kids in this project are going to need to know how to record audio. You go to Google, you go to YouTube. How do you record audio in Soundtrap? You find that out, and that's all you need to be able to teach. If you do it like that, chunking the training into digestible little, like, I need to be able to do this, as well as enlist students, usually the biggest pain in the butt kids, enlist them and say, I would like you for extra credit to learn Soundtrap inside and out. And when any kid has a question in the class, I'm going to turn to you and you're going to give them the answer. It gives the kids a sense of agency, a sense of, wow, I'm actually important. The teacher's telling me that I'm the expert in this. I know it might be a radical concept for some, but my biggest discipline problems when I was teaching at the middle school level were also the best at computers. It was literally a correlation. And I'd be like, all right, can you learn this software like inside and out, just in case there's a question? I'll give you an automatic A on the project as long as you're my helper. Cool, Frankel, that's awesome. And then you're on. And I think that would work in any teaching situation. So Noah, to get to a very long answer into a very succinct soundbite, I would say that all teachers need to be able to do is stay one step ahead of the students with the functionality of the software, but that software should always be used and dictated by the needs of the curriculum that you're teaching.
Right. So technology isn't the end in itself. It's always a way of getting to an end that you might not otherwise be able to get to.
Correct. One of my dearest friends in music education. Her name is Barbara Friedman, and I adore her. And she has a mantra that I wish I came up with, and that is teach music, the technology will follow. If you keep as the center point of you're hired to be a music teacher, not a technology teacher. And so if you just use technology as one of many different modalities to get a concept across to your kids, you're using it correctly, in my opinion. And if you instead think of it, oh my God, I have to teach sound trap. No, you don't have to teach sound trap. You have to teach the kids how to record themselves singing a song. That's what you have to learn. I hope that makes sense. It's a real mindset shift that a lot of music teachers aren't really aware of, and that is that you don't have to know every button. You don't have to know everything about the software to be able to use it effectively.
Now, Jim, to circle back to something you said earlier about how your students with the most challenging behaviors tended to be the best with computers, I'm wondering what the place of technology is in making learning accessible to students with divergent needs.
It's such an important question, and it'll sound cheesy, but I have heard countless stories of kids who, instead of dropping out of school, the reason they're there every day is because of a music technology program. And it sounds trite, but I'm telling you, I hear this over and over from teachers, especially teachers in urban centers where these kids are just like, they hate school, but they've got one passionate teacher who's giving them this access to this world that otherwise they wouldn't have seen. So let me explain where I think this all stems from. Every human being that has ever been and ever will be is creative. Every music program in the United States, with many exceptions, but most music programs never give kids enough opportunity to be creative musically. I'm saying that there's a musical creativity in every single kid, not just creativity. And I think that kids who have basically in their mind said, school is not for me, I don't like this, I don't want it, there's a deep reason why. It could be their home life, it could be issues that they're struggling with mental health, with their social interactions with other kids, with their own family history, that they just don't want to be here. They're not enjoying the journey, right? And those are the kids that need us the most, in my opinion. And I truly believe that when you give kids with those kind of issues an outlet to be creative, whether it's they are going to create their own hip hop and they're going to rap and they're talking and telling stories about their own lives, and those lives may be very different than the teacher's life. These kids may be exposed to things that you wouldn't dream of being exposed to, whether it's shootings, gang violence, things with their parents, things that they're being out on the streets at 2:00 in the morning. We don't know what happens to the kids the minute they go out of the doors of the school. We just hope they come back the next day safe and happy. But I truly believe that when those students specifically are given the opportunity, as well as the teacher validating them and saying, you're a creative being, and giving them a sense of purpose. And for the first time in their life, they're in a place where the teacher goes, you know what? That's awesome, right? They don't hear that in math. They don't hear that in science. They don't hear that in their other subjects because possibly they've disconnected. But when they get this kind of universal language to speak about their own lives, their own feelings, their own thoughts, I think it's magic. And I've seen it over and over and over again. And I truly believe that the kids who are the most troubled need us more than any kid. That's just the way I'm going to go through my life thinking. I started out teaching in a very challenging, impoverished school district, and I immediately went to the most affluent district. And I'll say this to anybody who's had the same situation or who hasn't, I would have paid any money to have those kids that I taught in the poor district, brought them to have all the resources to the school district that had everything. they would have thrived. There's no question about it. And it's actually the mission behind what I've done at MusicFirst about with Access is trying to eliminate the digital divide to get as many kids from wherever they're from with whatever money they have or don't have access to cool stuff to help them. I see it as therapy. I truly do.
So that raises another question for the teachers listening who are teaching in that sort of underserved school district, who are doing their best to string together a music program. What are some resources available through MusicFirst that they should look into?
Well, I don't want this to sound like a commercial at all, Noah, because it really isn't. I truly am a music teacher first. We do have lots and lots of kids from all different socio and economic backgrounds, lots of different schools. ETM has a whole bunch of MusicFirst stuff. And if a school has the budget and they're lucky enough to partner with organizations like ETM, and they have the finances, they can get stuff and bring it in. MusicFirst has curriculum, it has software, and it has support. However, and this will, I'll veer off the script for a minute. What I hear from a lot of music teachers, and it makes me sad, is they say, we don't have any money, so therefore we can't do anything. And that's just simply a defeatist attitude. I truly believe that, in my district, I taught in Frankel Lakes, New Jersey, very wealthy. They did not provide me with a computer. So I had two options. I could have sat there and gone, well, if you're not giving me a computer, then I'm not going to use any technology with my kids. And the union actually told me, do not, under any circumstances, bring in your own computer. So I was like, you know what? Do I do this and cut off an appendage and not teach the way I want to teach, or do I bring it in? So I brought in my own computer and I got a projector from the library, and I did whatever I could using free tools. There is so much good content online that's free that teachers can use. Incredibox is one. Band Lab is another. You can use the free versions of Noteflight and Soundtrap. You can go on musictheory.net. There's Chrome Music Lab, Groove Pizza, you name it. There's so much good stuff out there that's totally free. When I hear teachers go, I have no budget, I say, all you need is some kind of projector. That's literally it. You need some way to show the kids your screen rather than having them huddle around your laptop. And you can absolutely use technology in your school. What we do at MusicFirst is we make it really easy. We put it all in one place with one login. The content has software tasks built right into it. Super cool. If you have the budget, great. If you don't have the budget, don't give up hope. Go and get the free stuff. Invite your administrators in and say, look what I'm doing with no budget. Imagine if you could pay this much money for this software so the kids could actually save their work and have it. That's usually the differentiator between free and paid software. You always have to be your own best advocate as well. I did that. Funny, Noah, when I joined the corporate world, I was being interviewed by the president of Korg USA. And he said to me, isn't it bizarre that a middle school band director is about to become the head of a multi-million-dollar sales organization? To me, that makes no sense. And I said to him, first of all, what I have in my head and what my experience as an educator, you can't buy. That's number one. But number two, music teachers are the best salespeople of all, because not only are we selling our amazing subject to students who may or may not think it's cool, but we're also selling it to the community, to the parents, to our colleagues, and to the administration, why it's so important. I hate the fact that we have to advocate for ourselves, but we do. It's part of the gig. And so we're the best salespeople, in my humble opinion. So hopefully that gets to the point, Noah.
It would be great if we didn't have to have these skills, but we definitely get them over the course of teaching. So here we are recording a podcast about technology and music education, which is already pretty meta. But I understand that you've been doing some curriculum development in the area of podcasting in schools. So I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that and to take us one step further into into a very meta conversation.
Noah, to me, podcasting, I always call it the diorama of the 21st century. When I was a kid, if a teacher said you had a book report, I would just cringe. It's my least favorite thing to do. But if they said, but if you don't want to write a report, but instead you want to create a diorama that shows like a scene from the book, you can do that. I always opted for that because it was the creative solution. Yeah. Many technology kind of integrations, when you think about outcomes, what the student actually creates in your class. To me, that's the center point of any, like, what's the outcome at the end, the synthesis? What are the kids going to make? To me, podcasting literally checks every single box. And I'll give you some ideas across a music program. So I just finished writing a curriculum called Podcasting Across the Curriculum. It is 20 lesson plans. It's from MusicFirst. It's 20 lesson plans that get you from what is a podcast to promoting your podcast. So it's everything in between: composing, Foley effects, even making a pop filter for your, what kind of microphone should you use, how to do like what we're doing right now, how to record a podcast over the internet on tools like Zoom. Mm-hmm. So 20 lesson plans for like getting from point A to point Z with podcasting. But what I had the most fun writing were the 30 projects that I came up with, 30 different projects that you can do. So I'm going to give the listeners, and by the way, podcasting, we're doing one right now, but for those of you that think, oh, it's some incredibly difficult thing. No, it isn't. It's an audio recording. That's it, right? It's an audio recording that you post on a website that has an RSS feed, which is really simple syndication. You can get it on SoundCloud, on Spotify, whatever. That's all free. That's all it is an audio recording that has an RSS feed. That's it, right? So you can do it with GarageBand, with Mixcraft, with Soundtrap, Soundation, BandLab, doesn't matter. Even a handheld audio recorder, you can make a podcast. Audacity, you can make a podcast. So here's a couple of ideas. Number one, recruitment, program recruitment. Here's a great idea for, you want kids to be in your choir in your middle school next year. The old way of doing things was going around to every single elementary school in the catchment area and going, join middle school choir. or the right. first week of school, you'd go around to every single classroom. Here's a better idea. Have your students in your choir. A quick assignment. Why should other people join choir? Have them write it down, right? Pick 10 of the best statements from the kids. Then you stitch together and have those 10 kids come up and record themselves saying what they wrote, right? And then you as the teacher, you start off the podcast introducing yourself, what it's like to be in choir, how many performances you do, but don't take my word for it. You hand it over to all the kids. They all say, oh, you should go join choir because of this. And then you come in at the end. If you'd like to join choir, here's what you need to do. Come to my room 127 on Tuesday or Thursday mornings with a parent, and you're in. So program recruitment podcasts like that, kids love podcasts. That's a not unknown secret, right? Every kid, true crime podcasts are listened to by 10 to 25-year-olds, like exclusively. That's who's listening to these true crime podcasts. Right. So make a recruitment podcast. Have a This Week in Music History podcast, which is the first project I ever did with my kids. And don't do Western music history. Do music history today. Do nothing older than 20 years and assign groups of students, hey, you're going to get the week of November 7th. And November 7th to November 12th, look, here's a couple of websites where you can go and see what happened. Oh, Beyonce released her album, blah, 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 on November 10th, 2008. And then speak about that album. So This Week in Music podcast, program recruitment podcast, do your concert program notes as a podcast. So your winter concert coming up, at every single piece, you put a little tiny QR code that because we've all been doing COVID dining and they took away menus for some reason. So now every person knows what a QR code is. Have the parents scan the QR code over the piece. So let's say you're playing First Rockin' Christmas by Feldstein and O'Reilly. You put the QR code and there's a kid going, "This is First Rockin' Christmas by Feldstein and O'Reilly. We really enjoyed playing this piece. Mr. Teacher says that this is the hardest piece this band has ever tried." Whatever you want to do, you put program notes on QR codes. Again, it's an audio recording, but the ability to scan it and then have a music department podcast. And once a month, you as the teacher this is what's going on in the music department. Here are some upcoming performances. By the way, there's an audition coming up in March for NISMA Ratings Festival. You might, if you're interested, have a monthly podcast. I used to do a monthly newsletter for my music program. Having a podcast makes it seem much cooler. Again, all a podcast is an audio recording with an RSS feed that's available online. It is no different than a printed out newsletter. It's no different than any other way of assessing kids. It's a new and trendy thing. The funny thing about podcasts is that they were super popular from 2006 to 2008 in education. Then they dropped off the face of the earth. Like nobody cared about podcasting. I was doing podcasting back then. My kids loved it. It went away, and then all of a sudden Serial, the podcast on NPR, came on.
Right. And
now every 20-something in the world was like, I love podcasting. And now it's back big time in schools. So with software like Soundtrap, and we have a brand new partner, hardware partner called Focusrite. They make a product called the Vocaster, which makes it very, very easy to record podcasts. It's something that I think every music teacher should be doing. So I hope that gives some ideas. You can do it completely for free. If you need help, jim@musicfirst.com. I will absolutely help you. I'll point you in the right direction. You just go to SoundCloud, set up a podcasting channel, you're good to go.
That's awesome. And the thing that occurred to me is that a newsletter is great. Newsletters are very helpful, but you can't put audio in a newsletter. If you're doing a music department podcast, it's your newsletter with your sound built in.
With your choir singing in the background, with your band, with your string orchestra, whatever it is, your ensemble, mariachi, steel drums, whatever you're doing with your kids, have that playing in the background. We're rehearsing for our upcoming concert at the All-City Festival. Listen to what we sound like today, and then wait until you hear us in 3 months. Those kind of things are so easy to do, and a lot of teachers don't think about podcasting with it, but it really is a really great platform, outlet, and a great advocacy tool as well.
Right. And as a music teacher trying to make connections within your school with other teachers who are, oftentimes your best resources and allies, offering up the music room as a place where, for some of their projects, they could be collaborating with you and getting the students recording their history podcast or their science podcast. That sort of thing is such a great thing to bond over with your colleagues.
Absolutely. And I'm going to throw you a curveball here, Noah, because, I'm what I'm trying to do is give your listeners ideas that they can do for free right now with their kids that'll advance their cause. Here's another one. And this is crazy, but I found this website the other day and I'm absolutely obsessed with it. And it's all about beatboxing, right? So beatboxing, if you don't know, is making drum beats with your mouth. And there's, I've been to clinics at conferences and they get a little cringy when the presenter will say, all you need to do to beatbox is say boots and cats, right? And and everyone's sitting there going boots and cats and boots. And it just sounds terrible. Right. I get the cringes because I'm like, that is the opposite of what beatboxing sounds like. So there is an amazing website called Bizkit. And here's, for those of you that did not get the spelling of that, it is BZZKTT.com, Bizkit.com. It is this guy named Gavin Tite. He's a reverend, lives in Bermuda, and has the most fleshed out curriculum I've ever seen on how to beatbox, with videos, close-ups of his mouth talking. This is exactly how to make this sound. And that's totally free. So if you're a listener and you're like, I don't know what to do with my 7th grade boys, they're driving me bonkers. I don't know what to do with my 5th grade girls, they're driving me bonkers. Get this site, do a couple of lessons with them, and you watch. All these kids are going to be doing in the lunchroom from now on is beatboxing. We are at MusicFirst. We license the curriculum. We're bringing it in so that we're going to attach it to Soundtrap recording tasks. It'll be part of our curriculum as well. But bzzktt.com, you heard it from me. Go check it out. It's absolutely free and absolutely fantastic.
That is what I will be doing the moment we finish this recording. That's very cool.
Very cool. You'll see. It gets, the videos, you're like, oh my God, this guy's like, that's a real close up of his mouth, but it works. Like even myself, I've been trying. I'm not going to beatbox for you, Noah, not a chance. But I think the kids will love it. The kids will absolutely love it.
Excellent. All right. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about? I mean, plenty of stuff, but
yeah, I mean, what I'd love to leave your listeners with is that I have spent the last 35 years trying to convince music teachers that technology is a force for good in the classroom. The pandemic made it necessary, but after the pandemic, a lot of teachers kind of went, I'm not using this ever again. I have PTSD. I don't want to ever see Zoom again. I never want to see Google Classroom again. Like, I don't want anything. The bottom line is that the way I personally feel is that you are a music teacher. You do the best job you can, delivering the best curriculum you can, using the best pedagogy you can. And technology as part of that approach, I've never seen it go wrong. As long as you're using it effectively, consciously, and using it to better your instruction rather than distract, it's a good thing. And what I'm about to say next rubs some people the wrong way, so I don't want anybody to get offended. I personally believe that it lends relevancy to your teaching with the kids. And what I mean by that is that the kids are seeing technology used in every other classroom and probably used very badly. They'll probably have a teacher who uses PowerPoint and reads every single word on every single bullet. And they just are like, I can't stand this. In my opinion, music teachers have the coolest possible tools to use. And when kids see it and they see you using technology, even a tiny bit, they're like, whoa, this teacher's awesome, because they're doing something quote unquote fun, something meaningful, something relevant. And I don't mean that you can't be a good music teacher without it. That's not, I didn't have it. I was a pretty good music teacher. I did not have technology when I first started out, but it can make you a super teacher if you use it effectively and consciously, or conscientiously, I should say. So, YouTube is your friend. Go on YouTube and look up, how do I do this? How do I use Soundtrap? How do I use Noteflight? How do I use Flat? What do I do with BandLab? How does Incredibox work? I use YouTube all the time, and I use Google all the time. There are a lot of amazing music teachers out there that'll help you. And I applaud you and thank you, Noah, for having me on to talk about the subject I love most. And I'm hoping that people will get inspired to try integrating technology into their teaching as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jim, for being here with us today and sharing some of your insight and know-how.
I appreciate it, Noah. You be well and have a great school year.